Chapter 1. The Woman Who Spoke to Ghosts. The manor smelled of decay dressed in expensive perfume. Ilara stood in the marble foyer, her hands folded tight around the strap of her worn leather bag, and tried not to count the ways she didn't belong here. The invitation had been specific. Companion sought for elderly woman. Discretion required, generous compensation. She'd answered because her landlord had stopped accepting promises, and because the halfway house where she volunteered was about to lose its lease. She hadn't expected a fortress. The butler, pale, thin-lipped, moving with the eerie precision of a metronome, led her through corridors lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow. Candlelight flickered despite the electric sconces. The walls were too thick, the silence too complete. Mrs. Thornwood resides in the East Wing, the butler said without inflection. You'll find her difficult. I've worked with dementia patients before, Ilara replied, though her voice came out smaller than she intended. The butler's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Almost pity. He opened a door onto a room flooded with afternoon light, the only warm place she'd seen in this mausoleum. A woman sat by the window, silver hair cascading over a velvet dressing gown, her hands moving in restless patterns across her lap. Her face was still beautiful, fine-boned and otherworldly, though her eyes tracked nothing. She hasn't spoken coherently in months, the butler murmured. The family finds it distressing, so they hide her away? His expression shuddered. The young master will meet with you at dusk. If she tolerates your presence, the position is yours. He withdrew like smoke. Ilara approached slowly, the way she'd learned with frightened animals. The woman's fingers never stopped moving, tracing symbols, signing words to invisible audiences. Up close, her skin had an odd translucence, like porcelain stretched too thin. Hello, Ilara said softly, kneeling beside the chair. My name is Ilara, may I sit with you? The woman's gaze drifted past her unfocused, but her hands stilled. Ilara settled onto the floor, close but not crowding. She'd learned this in the rubble of her old life. After the scandal, after her name became a punchline, after the people she'd trusted had turned away. The very old and the very wounded recognized each other. They didn't need words. You have a beautiful view, Ilara continued, watching dust motes dance in the sun. I can see the gardens from here. There's a rose arbor that's still blooming, late for the season. The woman's head turned just slightly. Her lips moved. Ilara leaned in. What was that? Blood roses, the woman whispered, her voice like wind through a crypt. They bloom on stolen time. A chill traced Ilara's spine, but she kept her tone gentle. I'd like to hear about them. Would you tell me? For a moment the woman's eyes focused, truly focused, and they were the color of winter storms. Ancient, aware, afraid. You shouldn't be here, she breathed. When he finds you, he'll want to keep you. They always do. My son, her face crumpled. I can't remember his face anymore. I can't remember which century. The door opened. Ilara jerked upright as a man entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was tall, dark-haired, moving with a predator's economy of motion. His suit was perfectly tailored, his expression perfectly controlled, except for his eyes, which locked onto Ilara with an intensity that made her breath catch. They were the same color as his mother's, storm gray, impossibly old. You're speaking to her, he said, and it wasn't a question. His voice carried the weight of command, edged with something that might have been wonder or might have been warning. Ilara stood, chin lifting despite the instinct screaming at her to look away. She was telling me about the roses. She hasn't spoken to anyone in 6 months. He crossed to his mother with inhuman speed. No, that was impossible. Just a trick of the light, and crouched beside her chair. Maman? The old woman reached up, touching his face with trembling fingers. Mon fils, she whispered. When did you get so cold? His jaw tightened. For one unguarded moment, Ilara saw grief carved into every line of him, centuries of it, if the impossible weight in his eyes meant what her racing heart suspected. Then he stood, and the mask slid back into place. Miss Thorne, is it? Ilara. You should leave, Ilara. He said her name like a test, like a taste. This house isn't safe for someone like you. Someone like me? Alive? His mother supplied from her chair and laughed. High, brittle, breaking. Warm, breakable. He'll try to protect you, girl. That's how it starts. The man, her son, the master of this decaying fortress, closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they'd gone flat and distant. I'm offering you a great deal of money to do something no one else has managed. Speak to her, keep her calm, make her final years bearable. He paused. But if you accept, you'll be bound to this house until she passes. Those are the terms. Why? Because I don't trust easily, and she's the only family I have left. His voice dropped to something almost raw. And because you're the first person in 100 years who's looked at her and seen a person. 100 years. Ilara's pulse hammered in her throat, but she didn't run. She'd already lost everything. Her reputation, her career, her faith in people. What was left to fear? She looked at the woman in the chair, who was watching her with sudden, terrible clarity. I accept, Ilara said. The vampire smiled, and it held no comfort at all. Then welcome to House Thornwood, Ilara. Try not to die. Chapter 2. The rules of Night Ilara's room was in the east wing, 3 doors down from Mrs. Thornwood's suite. It was beautiful in the way abandoned churches were beautiful. High ceilings, velvet curtains thick as theater drapes, furniture that belonged in a museum. The bed was a 4-poster monstrosity that could sleep 4 people comfortably. She'd never felt more alone. The butler, she'd learned his name was Vincent, though he hadn't volunteered it, brought her dinner on a silver tray at 7. Cold cuts, cheese, bread that tasted like it had been baked that morning. He set it down without meeting her eyes. The master dined separately, he said before she could ask. And Mrs. Thornwood? She no longer requires meals. Vincent's expression remained carefully neutral. You'll find her most lucid in the late afternoon. After sunset, it's best to keep the door locked. Why? But he was already gone. Footsteps silent on the antique runner. Ilara ate alone, watching shadows lengthen across unfamiliar walls. She'd signed papers before Vincent showed her to the room, a contract dense with legal language and one very clear stipulation. She would not leave the grounds for 6 months. Room and board provided, salary deposited monthly, all medical needs attended to. Try not to die, the master had said. She wasn't sure he'd been joking. At midnight, she woke to singing. The voice was ethereal, threading through the walls like water through cracks. French words she didn't understand, set to a melody that ached with loss. Ilara pulled on her robe and stepped into the hallway. The manor was different at night. Colder. The electric lights had dimmed to almost nothing, and candles burned in wall sconces she was certain had been empty before. Their flames didn't flicker, didn't move at all. She followed the singing to Mrs. Thornwood's door. It was ajar. Ilara's hand hovered over the handle, Vincent's warning echoing in her mind. Then she heard the crash, something shattering, followed by a sob that sounded too young to come from the old woman's throat. She pushed inside. Mrs. Thornwood stood in the center of the room, barefoot, surrounded by broken glass. Her dressing gown hung off one shoulder. She was staring at the mirror above the vanity, or rather, at where the mirror had been. She'd smashed it. Blood ran down her palms in thin rivulets. I can't see myself, she whispered. I can't. When did I stop having a face? Let me help you. Ilara crossed to her carefully, avoiding the glass. You're bleeding. We need to... Mrs. Thornwood's head snapped toward her and her eyes were wrong. Too bright, too aware. The pupils had narrowed to slits. You smell like summer, she hissed, and smiled with too many teeth. Like daylight and... Maman, non. The master materialized between them. Actually materialized. One moment absent, the next simply there, and caught his mother's wrists. She struggled with inhuman strength, snarling words in a language that predated France, but he held firm. Ilara, leave, he commanded without looking at her. She's hurt. Leave. His voice cracked like a whip, layered with something that made her body move before her mind agreed. She stumbled backward into the hallway, and the door swung shut with a definitive click. For several minutes, She heard nothing. Then soft murmuring, a woman weeping. Silence. Alara waited, heart rabbiting against her ribs until the door opened again. The master stepped out, closing it gently behind him. His shirt was torn at the collar. Scratches marked his throat, already healing, she noticed with distant horror. Already fading. I told you to lock your door, he said quietly. She was hurt. She's dead. The word landed heavy between them. She's been dead for 300 years. What you saw in there wasn't grief or confusion. It was hunger. He studied her face, something flickering in his expression. And yet you tried to help her anyway. She's still a person. She's a monster wearing a person's memories. But his voice held no conviction. He ran a hand through his dark hair, suddenly looking exhausted despite the impossible smoothness of his face. Come, we need to talk. He led her to a study she hadn't seen before. All leather and old books and a fireplace large enough to stand in. He poured himself something dark from a crystal decanter, drank it in one swallow, then poured another. Not wine, Alara realized with creeping certainty. Too thick, too red. Sit, he said. She sat. He remained standing, silhouetted against the fire. My name is Lucien Thornwood. I am the master of this house, capital H, and I am 463 years old. My mother was turned against her will during the revolution. She was 42. Human years. His jaw tightened. The change didn't take properly. Her mind fractured. Most vampires who break like that are dealt with. But she's my mother. So I've kept her here, kept her safe for 2 centuries. Alara's mouth had gone dry. Vampires. Yes, and the staff? Vincent is human. Bound by contract and exceptional pay. The others? He gestured vaguely. Very. You're safe during the day. The others sleep then. True death sleep. Locked in the catacombs beneath the manor. At night, stay in your room unless I summon you. Why did you hire me? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. If she's dangerous, because she spoke to you. Lucien turned, and the firelight caught his eyes, made them glow like a wolf's. Because in 200 years no one has reached her. And because she's fading, Alara, true death comes for us eventually, even without a stake. I want her to remember herself before she goes. The rawness in his voice undid something in Alara's chest. She recognized that kind of grief, the helpless, furious love for someone you couldn't save. I'll stay, she said. But I need to understand the rules. Lucien's expression softened, just barely. Then let me teach you how to survive the night. Chapter 3. Lessons in Shadow. Lucien poured her tea. Earl Grey, perfectly steeped, and set the cup before her with the careful precision of someone who'd forgotten how fragile human things were. First rule, he said, settling into the chair across from her. Never invite anyone into your room. Vampires require invitation to cross a residential threshold. It's not legend, it's limitation, built into whatever curse or biology made us. Alara wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for its warmth. What about you? I own the house. Every threshold is already mine. He said it matter-of-factly, but something in his gaze promised he wouldn't abuse that power. Second rule, the day sleep is absolute. Between sunrise and sunset, we're vulnerable, dead to the world in the truest sense. Vincent knows where the catacombs are. You don't need to. Because someone might use that information. Because knowing makes you a target. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time looked almost human. Almost young, despite the ancient weight in his eyes. There are 4 great houses in this region. Thornwood, Ravenna, Blackwater, and Ashmont. We maintain a treaty, barely, but tensions are rising. Resources are scarce. Resources? His pause was deliberate. Ethical feeding sources. Willing donors. My house operates on consent. Others... His expression darkened. Don't. Alara set down her cup before her shaking hands could spill it. How does it work? The feeding? Direct blood exchange is the most efficient. Intimate. It creates a temporary bond. The donor feels pleasure, euphoria. The vampire takes only what's needed. His voice remained clinical, but his eyes tracked her pulse at her throat. It can be done safely. Or it can be weaponized. Have you ever... She stopped, unsure how to finish. Killed someone feeding? He held her gaze. Yes, once, 200 years ago. I was young, stupid, and convinced I was a monster anyway. I've spent 2 centuries trying to atone. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Third rule. If you see vampires you don't recognize on the grounds, find me immediately. Don't engage. Don't run. They can smell fear. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. He turned back, and something almost like a smile ghosted across his face. You're surprisingly calm. I stopped being surprised by cruelty a long time ago. The words came out harder than she intended. At least you're honest about what you are. Lucian studied her for a long moment. What happened to you, Alara Thorne? She looked away. I testified against someone powerful, someone everyone loved, and when the trial ended, I was the villain. Her throat tightened. I lost my job, my friends, my credibility. Turns out people prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. And yet you came here, to care for a dying woman you don't know. Because she deserves to be seen. Alara met his eyes. Don't you think? Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or respect. Fourth rule, he said quietly. My mother will have good days and bad days. On bad days, she won't know you. She might attack. If that happens, call for me. Don't try to restrain her yourself. What if you're sleeping? Vincent knows how to wake me. It's unpleasant, but possible. And on good days, talk to her. About anything, everything. She loved art, music, philosophy. She was brilliant before, his voice caught. Before the fear took her. Alara rose, drawn by the raw grief in his tone. Tell me about her. Who she was. Lucian's shoulders tensed. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he walked to a portrait above the fireplace, a woman in 18th century dress, painted with exquisite detail. Her smile was warm, intelligent, alive. Marie Claire Thornwood, he said. She ran a salon in Paris, hosted revolutionaries and artists. She hid people during the Terror, aristocrats, intellectuals, anyone with a price on their head. His hand drifted toward the portrait but didn't touch. She saved dozens of lives. Then a vampire she'd sheltered turned her without asking, without explaining what she'd become. She woke up changed and went mad trying to understand it. And you? I was turned trying to save her. Thought if I became what she was, I could help her navigate it. His laugh was bitter. I was wrong, but at least I could protect her. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding. Alara had learned this too. Sometimes love meant bearing witness to suffering you couldn't fix. I'll do my best by her, she said. I promise. Lucian turned, and the vulnerability in his face made her breath catch. Why? You could leave tomorrow. Break the contract. I wouldn't stop you. Because someone should stay. She held his gaze, and because I know what it's like to be abandoned when you're at your worst. Something fierce and grateful flashed in his eyes. He stepped closer. Too close. Close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from him. Could see the inhuman stillness of his chest. You're either very brave or very foolish, he murmured. Can't I be both? This time his smile was real. Devastating. Gone too quickly. Fifth rule, he said, voice dropping low. Don't trust me too much, Alara. I'm trying to be better than my nature. But I'm still a predator, and you... His gaze traced her face like a touch. You're very, very distracting. Heat climbed her neck. I'll keep that in mind. Do. He stepped back, rebuilding the distance between them. It's nearly dawn. You should sleep. Tomorrow we begin in earnest. Alara nodded, moving toward the door. She paused at the threshold. Lucien, thank you. For being honest. Don't thank me yet. His expression shadowed. Honesty is the least of what you'll need to survive here. She left him standing in the firelight, looking every inch the lonely king of a dying kingdom, and wondered what she'd really agreed to. Chapter 4. The Language of Ghosts. The days fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal, if normal included vampires sleeping in catacombs and portraits that seemed to watch her pass. Alara spent her mornings in the library, 3 stories of books in, languages living and dead, learning what she could about vampire history. The texts Vincent provided were clinical, academic. The Codex Noctis, a history of the great houses. The Treaty of Shadows, 1823. She read about blood oaths and territorial disputes, about the slow extinction of a species that had once numbered in the thousands. Now, according to the most recent census, fewer than 300 vampires remained in Europe. Afternoons belonged to Marie Claire. Today was a good day. The old woman sat in her chair by the window, lucid and present, while Alara read aloud from a book of Baudelaire poems. Marie Claire's eyes tracked the words, her lips moving soundlessly. Les fleurs du mal, she murmured when Alara finished. I knew him, you know, Charles. He was a terrible drunk and a magnificent poet. Her smile was distant, sad. He died young. They all did. Did you watch many people die? Alara asked gently. Everyone I ever loved. Marie Claire's fingers traced patterns on her armrest. Symbols Alara had started to recognize. Protection wards, she thought, or perhaps prayers, except Lucien, my beautiful, stubborn boy. I tried to tell him not to follow me into the dark. But he never could leave me alone. He loves you very much. He pities me. Marie Claire's voice sharpened. There's a difference, child. Love accepts, pity condescends. Her gaze fixed on Alara with sudden intensity. Which does he feel for you, I wonder? Heat crept up Alara's neck. He barely knows me. He sees you. That's more dangerous. The old woman reached out, surprisingly strong fingers closing around Alara's wrist. You remind him what it's like to be human. That's a drug for our kind. We crave what we've lost. Listen. Marie Claire's grip tightened. My son has been alone for 200 years. He's built walls so high even I can't reach him anymore. But you... Her eyes searched Alara's face. You're gentle, wounded. He'll want to protect you. He'll tell himself it's only duty. But one night he'll look at you and realize he's been alone too long. And then, ma chère, you'll have to choose. Choose what? Whether to run or stay. Whether to remain breakable or... She stopped, eyes clouding. What year is it? 25. Impossible. The revolution... Marie Claire's breath quickened. Where is Louis? He said he'd come back. He promised. They promised me. Her voice spiraled into panic. Alara squeezed her hand. You're safe. You're in your home. Lucien is here. But Marie Claire wasn't listening. She pulled away, rising unsteadily, her face contorting with fear and fury. Liars, murderers, they took my life. They took my son, Vincent. Alara called, but the old woman was already moving with inhuman speed, overturning the tea table. Porcelain shattered. Papers scattered. Maman. Lucien's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He stood in the doorway, still in the casual clothes he'd worn to sleep. Dark shirt, bare feet. His hair was disheveled. He'd come running, Alara realized, the moment he sensed danger. Marie Claire spun toward him, teeth bared in a snarl that belonged to something ancient and feral. Monster, she hissed. You wear his face, but you're not him. My son was warm. My son was alive. Lucien's expression shuddered, but not before Alara saw the wound land. I know, he said quietly. I'm sorry. He moved toward his mother slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. She backed away, keening like an injured animal. When she hit the wall, she crumpled, sliding down until she was huddled on the floor, shaking. Lucien knelt before her. It's me, Maman. You're Lucien. I know I'm not what you remember, but I'm still here. I'm still yours. Marie Claire looked up at him, tears streaming down her translucent cheeks. I don't want to be this anymore, she whispered. I'm so tired, my love. So tired. I know. He gathered her into his arms. This ancient, broken woman who'd once been brilliant and brave, and held her while she wept. I know. Alara turned away, giving them privacy, and nearly collided with Vincent in the doorway. She's getting worse, the butler said quietly. She's been worse for 200 years. Alara kept her voice low. How much longer can she survive like this? For our kind, madness is sometimes worse than death. Eventually, the mind simply stops. The body remains, but the person is gone. Vincent's gaze drifted to Lucien, still cradling his mother. He's been preparing for that day since I met him. Doesn't make it easier. Behind them, Marie-Claire's sobs had quieted. Lucien was murmuring to her in French, soft, soothing sounds. After a moment, he lifted her carefully and carried her to the bed. "Sleep, maman," he said. "I'll stay. You promise?" Her voice was small, childlike. "I promise." Ilara slipped from the room with Vincent, leaving Lucien to his vigil. They walked in silence until they reached the main staircase. "He needs to feed," Vincent said abruptly. Ilara stopped. "What?" "He hasn't fed properly in days. Too focused on his mother, on keeping you safe. He's weakening." Vincent's expression remained neutral, but concern threaded his tone. "I thought you should know. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the only one he listens to." Vincent met her eyes. "And because if he gets too weak, he becomes a liability. To himself and everyone in this house." Ilara's pulse quickened. "What am I supposed to do about it?" "That," Vincent said, descending the stairs, "is entirely up to you." She stood alone in the hallway, heart racing, understanding blooming like dark flowers in her mind. Lucien needed blood, and she was the only warm, willing body in the house. Chapter 5. The offering Ilara didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the canopy above, Vincent's words circling like vultures. "He needs to feed. He's weakening." She'd seen it herself, the shadows under Lucien's eyes, the tension in his movements, the way he'd hesitated before lifting his mother, as if testing his own strength. He was starving himself. For Marie-Claire, for his principles, for her. The realization settled heavy in her chest. He wouldn't ask. He'd rather suffer than make her uncomfortable, than cross the line between protector and predator. But she'd already crossed a dozen lines to be here. What was one more? At 3 a.m, she rose and pulled on her robe. The manor was silent, lit only by those impossible candles that never melted. She made her way to the study where Lucien had first explained the rules. He was there, sprawled in the leather chair, staring into the dead fireplace. A crystal glass sat on the side table, empty except for dark residue. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the pale column of his throat, and his hands gripped the armrests with barely controlled tension. "You should be sleeping," he said without looking at her. "So should you." "I don't sleep. Not the way you do." His voice was rough, strained. "Go back to bed, Ilara." Instead, she stepped inside and closed the door. "Vincent told me you haven't fed." His jaw tightened. "Vincent talks too much. He's worried about you. He's paid to be worried." Lucien finally turned his head, and his eyes caught the candlelight, storm gray threaded with something darker, hungrier. "And he had no right to burden you with this. It's not a burden." She moved closer, pulse racing but step steady. "It's a solution." "No." The word cracked like a whip. He rose abruptly, putting the chair between them. "Absolutely not. Why? Because you're under my protection. Because the power dynamic is already impossible. Because..." He dragged a hand through his hair, agitation breaking through his careful control. "Because I can't guarantee I'd stop." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. "I thought you said it could be done safely," Ilara said. "With consent, in theory. When the vampire isn't half-starved and the human isn't..." He stopped, looking away. "You don't know what you're offering." "Then explain it to me." Lucien laughed, sharp and bitter. "It's intimate, Ilara, more than sex. More than trust. The venom creates a euphoric high, dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin flooding your system. You'll feel things that aren't real, want things you don't actually want. And I'll feel your pulse under my tongue and taste everything you are. Your fear, your loneliness, your hidden desires. And it will take every ounce of control I have not to drain you dry just to ease this goddamn hunger." His breathing was ragged now, human affectation giving way to something primal. Ilara should have been terrified, should have run. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Understanding. Recognition. "I've spent 2 years being afraid," she said quietly. "Afraid of what people thought. Afraid I'd never be believed again. Afraid I was exactly as broken as they said." She stepped around the chair, closing the distance. I'm tired of being afraid, Lucian. And I'm tired of watching you suffer because you think you don't deserve help. I don't. His voice dropped to a whisper. I've lived 4 centuries. I've killed. I've taken what I wanted because I was strong enough to take it. What makes you think I deserve your compassion? Because you've spent 200 years trying to atone. Because you held your mother while she cried. Because you've built a house based on consent in a world that doesn't require it. She lifted her chin. That's not a monster, Lucian. That's a man trying to be better than he was. His control cracked. He closed his eyes, hands curling into fists. You have no idea what you do to me. Then show me. The silence stretched taut as a wire. When he opened his eyes, they'd changed. Pupils blown wide. Irises ringed with pale fire. If we do this, he said carefully, we do it my way. You sit. I control the depth and duration. The moment you want to stop, you say the word mercy, and I stop. Immediately. No questions. Agreed. And we never speak of this again. It's a medical necessity. Nothing more. The lie was transparent, but Alara nodded anyway. Nothing more. Lucian exhaled slowly, then gestured to the chair. Sit, she obeyed, heart hammering. He knelt beside her. Predator made supplicant, and his cold fingers found her wrist, thumb pressing gently against her pulse point. Your heart is racing, he murmured. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you honest. He lifted her wrist to his mouth, lips brushing the thin skin. This will hurt for a moment. Then it won't. Then it will feel, he hesitated, like falling. I'm already falling, she whispered. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, heat, regret. Then his teeth pierced her skin. The pain was bright and sharp, there and gone. In its place came warmth, spreading from the wound like spilled wine, turning her blood to honey and her thoughts to silk. She felt his mouth against her skin, careful and controlled, and the steady pull as he drank. The world softened at the edges. Her body felt weightless, anchored only by his hands. She was aware of everything. The texture of his hair where it brushed her arm, the whisper of his breath, the way he trembled with restraint, and nothing, floating in sensation without fear. She understood, suddenly, why people became addicted to this, why they'd seek it out. It wasn't the euphoria, it was the trust, the exquisite vulnerability of offering your life to someone and believing they'd give it back. Lucian's hand moved to cup her face, steadying her, and she felt the moment his control shifted. The pull deepened. His other hand gripped the chair arm hard enough to splinter wood. Lucian, she breathed. He pulled away immediately, breathing hard. Blood stained his lips, her blood, and his eyes were wild, feral, barely human. Get out, he rasped. Now. But now, Alara. She fled, legs unsteady, pulse racing with adrenaline and residual euphoria. Behind her, she heard wood crack and something shatter. Only when she reached her room and locked the door did she let herself collapse against it. Fingers pressed to the neat wounds at her wrist, and realized she'd do it again, without hesitation. Chapter 5. The offering Alara didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the canopy above, Vincent's words circling like vultures. He needs to feed. He's weakening. She'd seen it herself. The shadows under Lucian's eyes, the tension in his movements, the way he'd hesitated before lifting his mother, as if testing his own strength. He was starving himself. For Marie Claire, for his principles, for her. The realization settled heavy in her chest. He wouldn't ask. He'd rather suffer than make her uncomfortable, than cross the line between protector and predator. But she'd already crossed a dozen lines to be here. What was one more? At 3 a.m, she rose and pulled on her robe. The manor was silent, lit only by those impossible candles that never melted. She made her way to the study where Lucian had first explained the rules. He was there, sprawled in the leather chair, staring into the dead fireplace. A crystal glass sat on the side table, empty except for dark residue. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the pale column of his throat, and his hands gripped the armrests with barely controlled tension. You should be sleeping, he said without looking at her. So should you. I don't sleep. Not the way you do. His voice was rough, strained. Go back to bed, Alara. Instead, she stepped inside and closed the door. Vincent told me you haven't fed. His jaw tightened. Vincent talks too much. He's worried about you. He's paid to be worried. Lucian finally turned his head, and his eyes caught the candlelight. Storm gray threaded with something darker, hungrier. And he had no right to burden you with this. It's not a burden. She moved closer, pulse racing but steps steady. It's a solution. No, the word cracked like a whip. He rose abruptly, putting the chair between them. Absolutely not. Why? Because you're under my protection. Because the power dynamic is already impossible. Because... He dragged a hand through his hair, agitation breaking through his careful control. Because I can't guarantee I'd stop. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. I thought you said it could be done safely, Alara said. With consent, in theory, when the vampire isn't half-starved and the human isn't. He stopped, looking away. You don't know what you're offering. Then explain it to me. Lucian laughed, sharp and bitter. It's intimate, Alara. More than sex. More than trust. The venom creates a euphoric high. Dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin flooding your system. You'll feel things that aren't real. Want things you don't actually want. And I'll feel your pulse under my tongue and taste everything you are. Your fear, your loneliness, your hidden desires. And it will take every ounce of control I have not to drain you dry just to ease this goddamn hunger. His breathing was ragged now. Human affectation giving way to something primal. Alara should have been terrified, should have run. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Understanding. Recognition. I've spent 2 years being afraid, she said quietly. Afraid of what people thought. Afraid I'd never be believed again. Afraid I was exactly as broken as they said. She stepped around the chair, closing the distance. I'm tired of being afraid, Lucian. And I'm tired of watching you suffer because you think you don't deserve help. I don't. His voice dropped to a whisper. I've lived 4 centuries. I've killed. I've taken what I wanted because I was strong enough to take it. What makes you think I deserve your compassion? Because you've spent 200 years trying to atone. Because you held your mother while she cried. Because you've built a house based on consent in a world that doesn't require it. She lifted her chin. That's not a monster, Lucienne. That's a man trying to be better than he was. His control cracked. He closed his eyes, hands curling into fists. You have no idea what you do to me. Then show me. The silence stretched taut as a wire. When he opened his eyes, they'd changed. Pupils blown wide, irises ringed with pale fire. If we do this, he said carefully, we do it my way. You sit. I control the depth and duration. The moment you want to stop, you say the word mercy, and I stop. Immediately. No questions. Agreed. And we never speak of this again. It's a medical necessity. Nothing more. The lie was transparent, but Alara nodded anyway. Nothing more. Lucian exhaled slowly, then gestured to the chair. Sit, she obeyed, heart hammering. He knelt beside her, predator made supplicant, and his cold fingers found her wrist, thumb pressing gently against her pulse point. Your heart is racing, he murmured. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you honest. He lifted her wrist to his mouth, lips brushing the thin skin. This will hurt for a moment. Then it won't. Then it will feel... He hesitated. Like falling. I'm already falling, she whispered. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, heat, regret. Then his teeth pierced her skin. The pain was bright and sharp, there and gone. In its place came warmth, spreading from the wound like spilled wine, turning her blood to honey and her thoughts to silk. She felt his mouth against her skin, careful and controlled, and the steady pull as he drank. The world softened at the edges. Her body felt weightless, anchored only by his hands. She was aware of everything. The texture of his hair where it brushed her arm, the whisper of his breath, the way he trembled with restraint. And nothing, floating in sensation without fear. She understood. Suddenly, Why people became addicted to this. Why they'd seek it out. It wasn't the euphoria. It was the trust. The exquisite vulnerability of offering your life to someone and believing they'd give it back. Lucian's hand moved to cup her face, steadying her, and she felt the moment his control shifted. The pull deepened. His other hand gripped the chair arm hard enough to splinter wood. "Lucian," she breathed. He pulled away immediately, breathing hard. Blood stained his lips, her blood, and his eyes were wild, feral, barely human. "Get out," he rasped. "Now. But now, Alara." She fled, legs unsteady, pulse racing with adrenaline and residual euphoria. Behind her, she heard wood crack and something shatter. Only when she reached her room and locked the door did she let herself collapse against it. Fingers pressed to the neat wounds at her wrist, and realized she'd do it again, without hesitation. Chapter 7. The breaking point Marie Claire was having a lucid day, which made everything worse. She sat in her window chair, staring out at the gardens with terrible clarity. "They came, didn't they, Ravenna?" "I heard them." "How did you—" Alara stopped. Vampire hearing, even fractured. Marie Claire's senses were sharper than any human's. "I remember Katerina from before. She was beautiful then, too. Cruel, but beautiful." The old woman's fingers traced patterns on her armrest. Anxious, repetitive. "She'll destroy him if she gets the chance. She's wanted his territory for decades." Alara set down the tea tray and sat. "What can we do? We?" Marie Claire's gaze sharpened. "You're mortal, child. You'll be dust before this game even reaches its middle act. Why do you care?" "Because it matters. Because he matters." "Ah." Something knowing flickered in Marie Claire's expression. "You've already started falling. I can smell it on you. His venom, your blood. You've fed him." Heat crept up Ilara's neck. "He was starving himself." "Of course he was. My son has always been too noble for his own good." Marie Claire reached out, surprisingly gentle fingers touching Ilara's bandaged wrist. "Do you know what happens when a vampire feeds from the same human more than 3 times? The blood recognizes, creates pathways, makes it easier each time. Easier to find you, easier to read you, easier to want you." He said it was medical necessity. He lied. Or rather, he lied to himself. Marie Claire's smile was sad. "He hasn't fed from a human in 20 years. He uses blood banks, donors who never see his face, keeps distance, keeps control. But you," she studied Alara's face. "You he couldn't resist." "I don't understand. You will." The old woman settled back, gaze drifting toward the window. "I was human once, in love with a human man. We had Lucian. My beautiful boy, so warm, so alive. Then the vampire came, offered me eternal life like it was a gift." Her voice hardened. "I woke up cold. Wrong. And my husband looked at me like I was a stranger wearing his wife's face. What happened to him? He aged. I didn't. I watched him wither while I stayed frozen at 42. And it drove me mad long before the bloodlust did." Tears slipped down her translucent cheeks. "I killed him, Alara. Not violently, just I fed from him too many times. Took too much, and one night his heart simply stopped." Ilara's breath caught. "Marie Claire." Lucian found me holding his father's body, screaming. He was 19. Still human, still breakable. Her hands twisted in her lap. He demanded I turn him. Thought if we were the same, I wouldn't be alone. But it doesn't work that way. The madness just deepened. And now he spent 200 years caring for the monster who destroyed his life. The weight of that history settled between them, heavy and suffocating. "He doesn't see you as a monster," Alara said quietly. "He should." Marie Claire's gaze snapped back to her, suddenly fierce, "And you should see him as one. He's trying so hard to be good, but we're apex predators, child. Eventually nature wins." "I don't believe that." "Then you're a fool." But there was no venom in the words, only exhaustion. "Listen to me carefully. Ravenna won't stop with territory demands. They'll escalate. And when they do, they'll use you against him. They'll hurt you to weaken him, or worse. They'll try to turn you themselves. Claim you as theirs." Cold dread pooled in Alara's stomach. "Can they do that?" "If they can drain you to the edge of death, yes. The transformation requires an exchange. Vampire blood for human blood. If Katerina forces that exchange... Marie-Claire trailed off, but the implication hung heavy. Lucian wouldn't let that happen. Lucian is one vampire against an entire house. Love doesn't conquer logistics. Dear girl, the word love echoed in the space between them. Neither acknowledged it. A knock at the door broke the tension. Vincent entered, his usually composed expression tight with concern. Miss Thorne, the master requests your presence in his study. Ilara rose, pulse quickening. Is something wrong? He's received another message from the council. You should come now. Lucian stood at his desk, a single piece of parchment in his hand. His expression was carved from stone, but his eyes, when they met hers, held something raw and desperate. They've moved up the deadline, he said without preamble. 2 weeks, not 1 month. 2 weeks to double my contributions or surrender half my territory. That's not enough time. No, it's not. He set down the parchment with careful precision. And there's more. They're demanding I present myself before the council. In person, at the Ravenna estate, Vincent inhaled sharply. Sir, that's a trap. Yes. Lucian's smile was bitter. But if I refuse, they'll interpret it as an act of war. And we don't have the numbers to survive that. So what do we do? Ilara asked. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. We don't do anything. I go. I negotiate. I buy us time. Alone? It's safer that way. It's suicide, Vincent said flatly. Katerina has wanted your house for decades. The moment you're on her territory, unprotected, I'll take precautions. Lucian moved to the window, shoulders rigid. I need you both to stay here. Guard my mother. If something happens to me, Vincent knows the protocols. There are funds, arrangements. Stop. Ilara crossed to him, anger rising hot and sudden. You're not going on a suicide mission because you're too stubborn to ask for help. What help? He turned, and the despair in his eyes was awful to witness. I have 12 vampires, most of whom are young and untested. I have a dying mother who might kill someone at any moment. I have a crumbling house built on principles no one else respects. What exactly do you think I should do, Ilara? Fight, survive, find another way. There is no other way. His voice cracked. I've been fighting for 200 years. I'm tired. The admission hung between them. Raw, honest, devastating. Ilara reached up, cupping his too cold face in her hands. Then let me help you, please. You can't. I can think. I can plan. I can be what you need me to be. Her voice steadied with conviction. You saved your mother when everyone said you shouldn't. Let me save you. Lucian closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starving for warmth. You're going to break my heart, Ilara Thorne. Only if you let them break you first. When he opened his eyes, something had shifted. Resignation giving way to fragile hope. Then we plan, he said. Together. Chapter 8. Strategies and Secrets. They worked through the night. The study transformed into a command center. Vincent brought maps, ledgers, correspondence dating back decades. Ilara spread everything across the massive desk while Lucian paced, his mind clearly racing through centuries of political maneuvering. Ravenna's strength is numbers, he said, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Katerina commands 47 sworn vampires. But quantity doesn't always mean quality. What's their weakness? Ilara asked, scanning a map of territorial boundaries. Arrogance. They believe humans are cattle. That makes them predictable. He paused at the window, moonlight casting his profile in sharp relief. House Blackwater despises them. So does Ashmont. But neither will move against Ravenna without cause. The treaty binds us all. What if we gave them cause? Lucian turned, interest flickering in his eyes. Explain. Ilara pulled forward a document, the treaty itself, handwritten in elaborate script. Article 7. Any house that violates the feeding accords forfeits council protection. What exactly constitutes violation? Vincent leaned in, reading over her shoulder. Feeding without consent. Turning humans against their will. Killing donors unnecessarily. His eyes widened. Miss Thorne, are you suggesting... I'm suggesting we prove Ravenna has been breaking their own rules. She met Lucien's gaze. You said they don't believe in consent. That means there must be evidence. Bodies, witnesses, something. Even if there is, gathering proof would be suicide. Katerina keeps her feeding grounds locked down tight. But calculation had replaced despair in Lucian's expression. Unless someone got in from the inside, Ilara finished. Someone they wouldn't see as a threat. Absolutely not. Lucian's voice went hard. I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no. They already know about me. Katerina as much as invited me to switch houses. Because she wants leverage against me. You'd walk into a den of predators who see humans as food. He moved toward her, stopping just short of touching. I won't risk you that way. You're already risking yourself. Why is my life more valuable than yours? Because... He stopped, jaw working. The words hung unspoken between them. Heavy with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. Vincent cleared his throat delicately. There might be another option. House Blackwater's territory borders Ravenna's eastern edge. Lord Blackwater has a human consort. A willing donor who's been with him 30 years. If anyone would know about Ravenna's violations, it would be the humans in neighboring territories. Marcus Blackwater hasn't spoken to me in 50 years, Lucian said. Not since I refused to join his coalition against the old council. Then I'll go, Ilara said. As your representative, a human speaking to another human. No vampire politics involved. Lucian shook his head. Still too dangerous. Everything is dangerous now. She stood, holding his gaze. You said we'd plan together. That means trusting me. Trusting that I'm not as fragile as you think. Something shifted in his expression, resistance warring with respect. You're not fragile. You're reckless. I'm determined. There's a difference. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. My mother said almost exactly that to me once. Before the revolution, she's brilliant. Even now, yes. His voice softened. She is. They stood there, close enough that Ilara could feel the unnatural cold radiating from him. She'd stopped finding it frightening. Now it was simply... him. Part of the package that included ancient grief and stubborn honor, and the way he looked at her like she mattered more than she should. If you do this, he said quietly, you go with Vincent. In daylight, you speak only to Lord Blackwater's consort. Her name is Irina. You take no risks, accept no invitations, and you're back before sunset. Agreed. And you let me feed from you again before you go. Heat flooded her face. That's not insurance. His gaze dropped to her throat, then away. If you're carrying my venom, other vampires will think twice before touching you. It marks you as mine, he caught himself, as under Thornwood protection. The possessiveness in his tone should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent warmth curling through her stomach. Fine, she managed. When? Now. He gestured to the chair. If you're leaving at dawn, we should do this while I still have control. The implication wasn't lost on her. Every feeding weakened that control a little more. Every exchange deepened whatever was growing between them. She sat. He knelt. This time there was no clinical distance. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted her wrist, and when his eyes met hers, she saw hunger and longing, and something that looked dangerously like devotion. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Tell me you don't want this. I want this. The truth fell between them, simple and devastating. I want you, his control shattered. He pulled her wrist to his mouth and bit, quick, clean, necessary, and the euphoria hit like a wave. She gasped, free hand reaching for his shoulder, anchoring herself as the world tilted sideways. But this time, she felt more than pleasure. She felt him, his hunger, yes, but beneath it, a loneliness so vast it made her ache. 200 years of isolation. 200 years of duty and honor, and never letting anyone close enough to wound him. Until her. She felt the moment he sensed her understanding. His grip tightened, not to hurt but to hold, and she knew he was tasting her emotions the same way she felt his. The bond was forming, real and undeniable, built on blood and trust, and something neither could name. When he pulled away, his eyes were bright, almost feverish. "Ilara, I know." She touched his face, thumb brushing the corner of his mouth where a trace of her blood lingered. "I feel it too." He captured her hand, pressing it against his chest where a heart beat too slowly. "This is dangerous. Everything about us is dangerous. If I lose you, you won't." She said it with certainty she didn't quite feel. "We're going to win, Lucienne. Together." He pulled her close, not to feed, just to hold. And for a moment, they were simply two people trying to survive impossible odds. Outside, dawn was breaking, and with it their plan began. Chapter 9. Into the wolf's den, the Blackwater estate sat on a cliff overlooking the sea, all dark stone and windswept elegance. Nothing like Thornwood's Gothic decay. This was power maintained, not power fading. Vincent pulled the car through iron gates that opened soundlessly. "Remember," he said, "speak only to Irina. Lord Blackwater is unpredictable, and whatever you do, don't mention the feeding bond with Master Lucian. Blackwater doesn't approve of emotional entanglements." Ilara touched the fresh bandage at her wrist, hidden beneath her sleeve. She could still feel the echo of Lucien's mouth, the way he'd held her after like she was something precious. Understood. A woman met them at the door, 50 perhaps, with silver, threading through dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. Human, but carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd survived decades among predators. "Irina Volkov," she said, extending a hand. "You must be Miss Thorne. Vincent, please come in." She led them through halls lined with modern art and floor-to-ceiling windows. Sunlight poured in, warm and abundant. No shadows here. No hiding. They settled in a conservatory filled with living plants, roses, jasmine, herbs growing in copper pots. The air smelled of earth and growth. Ilara felt something in her chest ease. "You're wondering how I've survived so long," Irina said, pouring tea with steady hands. "The answer is simple. Boundaries, respect, and knowing exactly what I'm worth. Lucienne said you've been with Lord Blackwater 30 years. 32. Irina's smile held secrets. "I was a journalist investigating vampire attacks. Marcus could have killed me. Instead, he offered a deal, my silence for his protection and the truth about our world. I accepted. We've been partners ever since." "Partners," Ilara repeated. "Not possession?" "Never possession." Irina's gaze sharpened. "Is that what you're afraid of? That Lucian Thornwood sees you as property?" "I'm afraid of what I'm becoming." The admission slipped out before Ilara could stop it. "I came to care for his mother. Now I'm planning espionage and letting him feed from me and—" She stopped, swallowing hard, and feeling things you didn't expect. Irina set down her cup. "Let me tell you something about vampire bonds, Miss Thorne. They're real. The venom creates chemical pathways, yes, but it doesn't create emotion. It amplifies what's already there. If you feel something for Lucian, that's yours. Not the blood magic." The words settled over Ilara like absolution. "How do you know?" "Because I've loved Marcus for 3 decades, and I've never let him feed from me." "Not once." Irina's expression softened. "I'm his partner, not his prey. That's the line I drew, and he's respected it. But you," she studied Ilara carefully, "you've already crossed that line. The question is whether you did it willingly or because you felt you had no choice." "I chose it." Ilara met her eyes. "He was starving himself. I offered. And the second time, heat crept up Ilara's neck. I chose that too. Then own it. Don't let fear or shame convince you it was manipulation." Irina leaned forward. "Now, you came here for information about Ravenna. What exactly do you need to know?" Vincent pulled out a small notebook. Evidence of treaty violations, unwilling donors, suspicious deaths, anything that could be brought before the council. Irina's expression darkened. "How much time do we have?" "Less than 2 weeks. Then we move quickly." She rose, beckoning them to follow. "Marcus keeps records. Everything that crosses our borders. Every complaint from humans in neighboring territories. If Ravenna has been breaking the accords, we'll find it." She led them to a study lined with filing cabinets. Meticulous, organized, decades of documentation. Irina pulled folders methodically, spreading them across a table. Here, 3 donors who disappeared after entering Ravenna territory. Official report said they moved away, but their families never heard from them again. She tapped another file. 5 deaths ruled as accidents, animal attacks, they claimed. But the wounds were too precise, too controlled. Would this hold up before the council? Alara asked. Not alone. You need witnesses. Living ones who'll testify. Irina hesitated. There's a woman, Elena. She escaped Ravenna 6 months ago. Marcus granted her sanctuary, but she's terrified. Barely speaks. Would she talk to us? To another human? Irina considered. Maybe, but Alara, if Katerina discovers we're building a case against her, she'll strike fast. You need to be prepared for retaliation. Lucian is presenting himself before the council in 10 days. If we can't prove Ravenna's violations before then, he's dead. Irina finished bluntly. Or worse. Katerina doesn't just kill her enemies. She collects them. I've heard rumors of vampires bound by blood oaths, forced to serve her for centuries. Horror crawled up Alara's spine. We won't let that happen. Good. Irina handed her a business card. Heavy stock, elegant script. A phone number, nothing more. Call me tonight. I'll arrange a meeting with Elena. But Miss Thorne, be careful. Loving a vampire means accepting that you'll always be the vulnerable one. It means trusting them with your life every single day. Not everyone can handle that, can you? Irina smiled, sad and knowing. Some days better than others. But Marcus is worth it. The question is Lucian worth it to you? Alara thought of storm-gray eyes and careful hands, of the way he'd held his mother while she cried, of his voice when he'd said, "You're going to break my heart." Yes, she said. He is. They drove back as the sun began its descent, Vincent navigating the coastal road with practiced ease. Alara watched the ocean roll and crash against cliffs, her mind spinning with plans and possibilities. Miss Thorne, Vincent said quietly, I've served Master Lucian for 40 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Is that a warning? An observation. He glanced at her. He's a good man, vampire rather. He deserves happiness, but more than that, he deserves honesty. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you decide, tell him the truth. Don't let him wonder. I will, Alara promised. As Thornwood Manor came into view, dark and looming against the twilight sky, she felt something settle in her chest. Determination. Purpose. And beneath it, something fiercer. She was done being afraid. Done being the victim in her own story. If Ravenna wanted war, they'd give them war. But on Thornwood's terms. On their terms. Lucian stood in the doorway waiting, backlit by candlelight, looking like something out of a Gothic painting. When he saw her, relief flooded his expression. You came back, he said, as if he doubted. Always, Alara replied, and meant it with everything she had. Chapter 10. The night. Everything changed. They didn't make it to the study. Lucian pulled Alara inside, hands framing her face, searching her eyes with an intensity that stole her breath. You're hurt. I can smell blood. I'm fine. Just a paper cut. She covered his hands with hers. Lucienne, we found something. Evidence. Irina has files on Ravenna's violations, and there's a witness willing to testify. Later. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Right now, I need to know you're safe. The rawness in his voice undid her. She'd spent the entire drive back planning strategy, building arguments, preparing for battle. But standing here, feeling the tremor in his hands, she realized he'd spent the day imagining every way he could lose her. I'm here, she said softly. I'm safe. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, and for a long moment they simply stood there, vampire and human, ancient and mortal, holding each other like the world might end at any second. Which, Alara realized, it very well might. Vincent cleared his throat delicately from the doorway. Sir, we should brief you on what we learned. Lucian straightened, composure sliding back into place like armor. Of course, the study. But his hand didn't leave Alara's back as they walked. They laid everything out. The files, the testimonies, Elena's potential witness statement. Lucian listened with absolute focus, his tactical mind clearly racing through scenarios. "It's good," he said finally. "Better than I hoped. But it's not enough to bring before the council without corroboration. One witness, however credible, can be discredited. We need multiple sources. Irina is arranging a meeting with Elena tonight," Ilara said. "I could go back." "No." The word was absolute. "Sunset has passed. You're not leaving this house after dark." "Lucian." "He's right, Miss Thorne." Vincent's expression was grave. "If Ravenna has any suspicion we're investigating them, you're the obvious target. Human, unprotected, emotionally significant to the master. They'll use you without hesitation. Then come with me, both of you. If I leave the estate, my mother is vulnerable." Lucian's jaw tightened. "And I can't ask Vincent to face House Blackwater's territory alone while escorting you. Marcus tolerates me. He doesn't trust my people. They were trapped. Every move blocked, every option carrying impossible risk." "There has to be another way," Ilara insisted. "There is." Marie-Claire's voice drifted from the doorway. They all turned. The old woman stood there in her dressing gown, more present than Ilara had seen her in days. Her eyes were clear, focused, terribly sane. "Maman," Lucian breathed, "you should be resting." "I've been resting for 200 years. She moved into the room with eerie grace. "I heard everything. You need multiple witnesses against Ravenna. I can testify. You're not well enough. I'm mad, not blind." Her gaze swept over them. "I've watched Katerina operate for centuries. I know exactly what she does to humans in her territory. I've seen it during my lucid moments. The bodies, the missing people, the way she treats donors like livestock. The council won't accept testimony from someone with your condition," Lucian said carefully. "Then let them examine me. Let them see that even broken, I remember the truth." Marie-Claire's expression hardened. "I've been your burden for 200 years, my son. Let me be your weapon now." Ilara saw the conflict tear across Lucian's face. Love warring with pragmatism, protection warring with necessity. "It's too dangerous," he said. "If Ravenna retaliates, I'm already dying." Marie-Claire's voice gentled. "We both know it. My mind is slipping faster now. Some days I don't remember my own name. But today, right now, I'm here. Let me help you while I still can." The silence stretched taut. "We need to move quickly," Vincent said quietly. "Present the case before the council convenes for Master Lucian's hearing. Force them to address Ravenna's violations first." "That gives us 8 days," Lucian said. 8 days to gather testimony, build an unassailable case, and pray the council acts before Katerina strikes. "Then we start now." Ilara stood, resolution hardening into steel. "Irina is meeting with Elena tonight. I'll call her. Arrange for testimony to be recorded and witnessed. Marie-Claire can give her statement tomorrow. Vincent can reach out to other houses. Ashmont, whoever else might have grievances against Ravenna. And I'll contact the council directly," Lucian added, his tactical mind engaging. "Request an emergency session. Frame it as information critical to territorial negotiations." "They'll suspect," Vincent warned. "Let them." Something fierce ignited in Lucian's eyes. Katerina has been violating the accords for decades, hiding behind her numbers and her political connections. It's time someone called her to account. Marie-Claire smiled, sharp, satisfied, absolutely sane. "Now you sound like the son I raised, not the one who's been playing defense for 2 centuries. I learned defense from you, maman." Lucien's voice softened. "You taught me that survival is victory enough." "I was wrong." She crossed to him, cupping his face with trembling hands. "Survival isn't victory. Living is. Loving is. Fighting for something more than just another day." Her gaze slid to Ilara, meaningful and knowing. "I should make those calls," Ilara said. Suddenly needing air, she escaped to the library, pulling out the business card Irina had given her. Her hands shook as she dialed. The phone rang 3 times before Irina answered. "Miss Thorne, I wasn't expecting to hear from you until tomorrow." "Plans changed. How soon can you arrange the meeting with Elena?" "Tonight, if necessary. Why?" "Because we're out of time." Ilara explained quickly. Marie-Claire's testimony, the emergency council session, the 8-day window. "We need everything documented, witnessed, Unimpeachable. Understood. I'll have Elena here within 2 hours. Can you come? Alara thought of Lucian's absolute refusal, the fear beneath his command. I'll find a way. She hung up and turned to find Lucian standing in the doorway. You're not going, he said. I have to. Then I'm coming with you. His expression was resolute. Vincent can ward my mother's room. We'll go together, gather the testimony, and return before dawn. Lucian, I've spent 200 years hiding behind these walls. Ilara, letting fear dictate every choice. He crossed to her, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. But you were right. It's time to fight, and I won't let you walk into danger alone. Something shifted between them, partnership solidifying into something deeper. Something permanent. Together then, she whispered. Always. He pressed his forehead to hers, cold meeting warm. Whatever comes. Outside, storm clouds gathered over Thornwood Manor, and in the distance, Ravenna prepared for war.